So first off, rethinking hiring processes. One of our biggest downfalls, I think, when hiring is that we always follow the same pattern of behavior time and time again, applying the same principles to every search that we do, even if roles are different or we have new challenges such as the skills gap that we're currently facing. So the reason that we do that is obviously it's just human nature. We look for mental shortcuts whenever we can to make things easier for ourselves. So whenever we make a decision, it's based on our previously learned behaviors. And it applies to all aspects of our life, whether you're deciding what to have for lunch or buying toothpaste or hiring an asset manager. So it's very normal, but this kind of pattern is what we would call the ladder of inference. And it's also where we start to see personal preferences, biases, assumptions all start to creep into the process. So the ladder of inference is a step-by-step process that you might follow when making decisions. But because it is full of assumptions or personal preferences, it's not always based on facts of the situation you're currently facing. It's kind of an amalgamation of facts of lots of different situations that you've faced. And it's easy to see how you might jump from the first rung to the last rung when we become more familiar with processes. We kind of get into a habit of how to address them. I'm not going to go into it kind of much more than that, but there is a really good video online called Rethinking Thinking by Trevor Mavis. So if you want to know more about that, go and watch it. So then thinking about your hiring processes, it's easy to see how that the ladder of inference is going to apply to recruitment and hiring. So in addressing the skills gap, you need to kind of actively unlearn some of the thinking that you might have previously used to assess candidates, and also in order to be more open-minded and focus on the skills that you actually want to address. Next slide, please. So what can you actually do about it practically? This is what I would do. It's kind of an analysis of what you've got. So prioritize your skill sets. I would sit down, I would look at your team and identify what skill sets they have and what they don't have. So you know what skills you're specifically looking for. And then make those skills the front and center of everything you do around this job search. So make sure that your job descriptions are updated so that those are the main points at the top. Make sure that your job ads are updated so those are the main points at the top. Anything else that is not now a priority should either come off the job ad ideally, or it should be in a completely separate section and it's really clearly noted that it's not a requirement to apply for the job. What you don't want to do is put candidates off or have them deselect themselves based on a couple of bullet points that actually are not even that critical to the role when you're trying to fill these specific skills. So, I mean, another example is that studies show men will apply for roles where they fulfill around 60% of the criteria, whereas women will only apply when they fulfill 90 to 100% of the criteria. So you don't want people to deselect based on a couple of points that are not actually even that important. So now that you have identified your priorities, reframe how you think about your ideal candidate. And the phrase I would stress here is culture add, not culture fit. It's very easy to recruit the same background types, whether that's education or experience or whatever, but it's important that you kind of get rid of that image that you had before, because we need to start fresh and we need to kind of start again. Going back to the skills, think about of the priorities and then the secondary requirements, what can actually be taught to somebody? So what could somebody learn on the job? Or what do you have capacity as a team, a manager or a company to teach that person? You could obviously also use external training partners such as Bayfield to help support that. But also think about who's actually going to deliver these trainings and who on the team might be able to support, because there's no point kind of bringing somebody in and then not being able to give them everything that they need to thrive in their role. I would also analyze the role and think about the level that somebody's coming in at. Kieran obviously referenced that sometimes we've had really long job searches because people just can't find the right people. So potentially look at somebody slightly more junior that, again, you can teach more on the job. You could also utilize grads or apprenticeships. That's also going to future-proof your talent pipeline, because in another 3 to 5 years, you'll have those people coming through. On the flip side of that, could they be a more senior candidate? Or somebody who wants to work on a part-time basis. There are a lot of reasons why people might want to work part-time. People might be returning from a career break. People might be looking at a phased retirement. So could you look at kind of either end of the scale and identify some possibilities around that? And then the last point on prioritizing your skill sets is just communicate these priorities with all of the stakeholders. So think about everybody that's going to be involved in hiring this person, hiring line managers, the TA or HR partners, recruitment partners, and your wider team. And just make sure that this is clear, that what the priorities are and what it is that you're looking for. On the sourcing of candidates. So once you've made those changes to your job ads and your job descriptions, rethink where you're advertising. Again, if you're looking at somebody who's a bit more junior, potentially they don't know all the right job boards that they should be on for the industry. So could you look at other avenues? Because I think what we tend to do is go to the same places. Everybody's on LinkedIn quite a lot. So maybe try some new places to look for people. And like I say, if grads or apprentices are an option, there are lots of organizations out there that are able to support. The Land Collective is a good example for real estate specifically, who will help support young people to get into property. They have a development program that they can set them up on, and they'll introduce them to potential employers. So there are people out there who are kind of doing the work, and you don't need to be reinventing the wheel if you're not like a big company or you kind of just want to try it out. Again, rethink what companies you might be targeting new hires from. Often as a recruitment partner, we kind of get given a list of 3, 4, 5 different companies that people would say we would want to hire somebody from this company, but there are a wide variety of reasons why somebody might not have been given the right opportunity to get into those companies. So just because they haven't come from a specific place doesn't mean that they're not necessarily a good candidate. So again, throw the net a bit wider, think about where you're targeting people from. And then speak to your recruitment partners. Clarify those priorities and expectations and give them permission to challenge you if they think that you're wrong. I think that's quite an important one, building that strong relationship with your talent acquisition or your recruitment teams. So coming down to the interview process itself, I would think about the questions ordinarily that you're asking people when you're hiring. You might need to adjust them based on those prioritized skills that you've already identified. And then you should be looking at competency-based questioning, and recognize that some of the softer skills might need to be taught still. So don't let your judgment be clouded by some things that are not quite up to scratch, and know which ones you can help and train people on and which ones are the priority. Think about who is involved in your company to interview and make sure that they're aligned with everything. So again, this is all about communications. Make sure you've had a 10, 15-minute prep call with the other interviewees, go through the questions, go through how you're going to assess the candidate. So what are you going to be measuring them on? What are the priorities? What would a good answer look like? What would a good candidate look like? And make sure that you're all on the same page. Your onboarding process. So I think it's just as important as the hiring and the recruitment. You know, I said earlier, if you kind of bring somebody in but then haven't got the capacity to support them properly, you are probably just going to end up rehiring in another 6 months. So it's really important that you can identify that you've got capacity to train people, as well as the usual onboarding. So thinking about people who may not know real estate so well, they may not have worked for a company of your size or scale, they might not have a lot of corporate experience or soft skills with clients, they might need more regular catch-ups or one-to-ones, and thinking about other people in your company that could support doing that as well. So have you got like a mentor program or a buddy system that you can match people up so that they've got other people in the company to help them? And then the last point here is just clear communications. I've tried to stress this throughout, but it's really important that you are aligned with everybody, all of the stakeholders involved. Make sure everybody's clear on the priorities. Make sure your written communications reflect that. So your job ads, your job descriptions, your recruitment partners. Like I say, it's so easy to go back to your defaults, go back to what you've known for a long time. It's important that you can maintain the priority. Otherwise, you'll go round and round in circles even more. So yeah, speak to everybody and make sure that you are clear on those. And I would also, again, just stress the job ads. You can't underestimate how little things might put people off that you haven't even thought about. So think about your language. Gendered language is a big one, and just how long it is. All of those things have kind of like an optimal length. And I think there's probably a lot of resources on LinkedIn or Total Jobs, places like those that will actually tell you what the optimal kind of job length of a job ad and all those sorts of things. So next, please, thank you. So if you are looking for more ways to boost your company as an inclusive employer, I would always say start with data collection. It's what every company will tell you, every D&I person will tell you. If you are not measuring your diversity, you don't really know how well you're doing. And it's all about seeing it change and an increase in representation. So use anonymous tracking, make sure you communicate with your staff why you're measuring it, what you're going to do with the data, because that's going to encourage people to actually want to give you the data in the first place. And the other thing you can measure is inclusivity within your company. And it's as simple as incorporating it into existing company feedback or staff feedback surveys, something to the effect of how included do you feel in this company? But obviously there are other questions around that could kind of give you a sense of it as well. At Cobalt, we do measure diversity data for our job seekers, so for our candidates, and we publish those regularly around every 6 months. So they're all on our website, our current ones that we've done. If you want to have more of a custom report as a client, as a company, we can provide those if you work with us, obviously. It's a really good way to just assess where you're at, where you are at, who is applying to your jobs, who is going forward to interview stages, all of those sorts of things, to see where you might have gaps or you might not be or think challenges that you need to address. And then the last one, I'd say industry groups. You do not need to reinvent the wheel. Use what's already out there. Speak to organisations. Like I said, there's so many people doing amazing work. I've spoken about the Land Collective. Real Estate Balance are another one that I'm sure many people will know. And they host a lot of really good events, speaker events, but they also do things like reverse mentoring across the industry. So they're a really fantastic organisation. And then I would also say RICS are a good place to start. So RICS have recently published a kind of series of DE&I focused things where it talks about all different areas of diversity and what you can be doing as a company. So